Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of the Easy EdTech Podcast. My name is Monica Burns, and I am so glad that you're here to join me today. If you want to make the most of education technology, aka EdTech, well, you are in the right place. My goal has always been to help make EdTech easier and give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. Every Tuesday here on the Easy EdTech Podcast, you'll hear stories from my time in the classroom, the work I do now with schools and districts, and my travels to different EdTech events. Get ready for solo episodes where I share some quick tips and stories, and interviews full of practical ideas and stories from new guests each month. If we mention something you'd like to check out, make sure to click the link. You'll find it in the episode description or the summary area where you're listening to this podcast, or you can find every episode and all of the resources we mention by going to classtechtips.com/podcast, or by going to classtechtips.com and just clicking on the Easy EdTech Podcast button at the top of the page. This episode is sponsored by my new ASCD deck of cards, Purposeful EdTech Tips. It's part of the Quick Wins series and packed with 50 fast, effective ideas for planning, teaching, and reflection. You'll find AI prompts, student activities, teacher tips, and strategies for checking for understanding, all designed to help you use EdTech with purpose. Whether you're planning your next unit or looking for a quick idea before class starts, these cards are full of inspiration and super easy to use. Head to classtechtips.com/cards to grab your deck today. That's classtechtips.com/cards to check it out. This week's episode is all about quick ways to use AI for tasks that take too long. And as a classroom teacher, I definitely knew the feeling of coming to the end of the day, but still having plenty of tasks to tackle on my to-do list. You might have had the same experience of feeling like you're running on fumes, but you still have a rubric to format or a newsletter to draft and a folder full of resources that need organizing. All of these tasks are important, but there's only so much time in the day, and as your to-do list grows, the items on your list might start to pull you away from the parts of your job that I like to think of, matter the most. We want to spend time connecting with students, working together with colleagues, and really creating meaningful learning experience. And this is really where I see AI as playing an important role in helping educators. It's not going to replace your expertise, but it can help you reclaim some of that time and what I often think of as brain capital. I'm doing air quotes even as I'm recording this because oftentimes I'm in person working with the group and I describe this, right, as, we want to save our brain capital for our most important tasks. So I've spent the past decade plus now sharing tips, strategies, and ideas for educators, all underneath this umbrella with this commitment to help make EdTech easier. And over the past couple years, I've been exploring, of course, how AI-powered tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Copilot, you name it, can help teachers streamline some of those items on their to-do list. So earlier this school year, I hosted a webinar for educators really around this topic, the topic of today's episode, and we looked at 3 categories of time-consuming tasks that AI might be able to help you tackle. And so in today's episode, I'm going to take you through some of those examples. So hopefully you can start spotting opportunities to save time throughout the school week. Let's dive in. Now, before we get to that category, one thing I shared with the group when I hosted this webinar, I just shared this with another group in person a few weeks ago. I often reference this, is a 2025 study from the Walton Family Foundation and Gallup all about Teaching for Tomorrow, and it includes some great stats connected to this topic. I'll link out to it in the show notes for this episode, but they found that 84% of teachers said AI saved them time making worksheets, right, or activities for students. 83% for assessments, 81% for admin work. And the part that I think is super important and really worth highlighting is that teachers reported that the quality of their work did not decline. And, that's an area where, as we, talk about why we're trying to leverage these tools, right? Thinking of things that take up a lot of time during the day, right? This may be where you go first when you start thinking about, why you're using these tools, right, in the first place. So you might have had the experience of, using AI to tackle something on your to-do list, right? I don't see this as cutting corners, but really saving that energy I would have spent on formatting or organizing something so that I can put that energy towards reviewing, refining, making sure the final thing I'm sharing with my group is just right. So the first category on the list is formatting and document prep. This is when you know what you want to create, like a rubric or a newsletter or a handout, but the formatting is really what's going to slow you down. So you've got messy notes or a vision in your head, and the tedious part is really getting it into a polished, shareable format. Here's what might fall into this category: creating rubrics from your notes, drafting newsletters for families, formatting report card comments, building handouts or reference sheets, and turning an outline into a slide deck. The expertise is totally yours. You know what belongs in that rubric. You know what families need to hear in your monthly update, but you're getting some help. So how does this work? Well, you might take your messy notes for a 5th grade research project and ask a chatbot to turn them into a 4-point rubric with columns for exceeds, meets, approaching, or below. In Gemini, you might even export that table directly to Google Sheets and start editing right away. And if you wanted to go further, you could ask Gemini's Canvas feature to turn a lesson outline into a slide deck and export it into Google Slides. I've got a post on the blog that goes through all of that. It went live on April 8th on how to create slides with Gemini. It's a step-by-step guide, an absolute favorite, and might be one you want to check out. So the starting point is never the final product, but it's definitely something that would have taken you a lot longer to create from scratch. So that first category of formatting and doc prep, definitely a good one. Next up is lesson drafting and planning. This category was the clear favorite when I did this webinar recently, the one I referenced at the beginning of the episode. I pulled educators in the group, and this is the one that I asked the question, which task eats up the most of your time? This is the one that they all were like, yes, 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 yes. It was like lighting up the whole chat. So you might know exactly what you want to teach, but getting from a learning objective to a structured lesson plan takes some time, especially when you're juggling multiple preps. The lesson drafting and planning category, this one includes turning a learning objective into a lesson outline, restructuring an existing lesson into a new or preferred format, and even simplifying supplemental resources for different reading levels, like, creating differentiated materials. When I was a 5th grade teacher, I once was asked to teach the lattice method for multiplication. Not sure if you know this one. I literally ran down the hallway to ask a colleague for help. And, I can't help but think, what if I didn't have a helpful colleague who could take me through the steps, right? I hope that I would have someone nearby, but if I didn't, right, I could have popped that same question into a chatbot. Then I'd get, a set of directions for introducing this strategy and a lesson outline, in minutes. At that time, I wasn't even accessing YouTube. I think YouTube was around. I don't want to date myself so far back, but going to YouTube to look for a tutorial was not a thing. So just the idea that this is now a tool in your tool belt is pretty wild. Now, in this category of lesson drafting and planning, one of my favorite strategies is asking the chatbot to simplify supplemental resources. You might say something like, I'm about to share this passage with students, and I'm afraid it's too hard for them to understand. highlight any idioms or metaphors that may be confusing, and suggest additional vocab I should introduce before sharing it with them. You want to make sure, of course, you have permission if you're uploading something, right, or copy and pasting to do this, but it's definitely a useful strategy. Now, the third and final category is one that doesn't often get a lot of attention, but can definitely make a big impact. It's one of the most powerful ways AI can save you time, over the long run, over the long haul. Organizing digital files, sorting resources by standards, and setting up systems that keep everything easy to find is huge. So this category of organizing and managing, kind of less exciting maybe, but definitely has a big impact. These are the kind of tasks that always end up at the bottom of my to-do list because they feel super overwhelming. Like I don't know where to start. But here's what might fit in this category. Creating a file naming system for your digital resources, sorting existing activities by standard, building a vocab list organized by unit, and cataloging your classroom library. So you might ask a chatbot something like, I teach 8th grade ELA and science, create a file naming convention I can use for all of my digital resources. Include the subject, unit number, resource type, date. Give me 10 examples using real topics from a typical 8th grade curriculum. Suddenly, you have a system you can commit to instead of staring at a messy Google Drive, wondering where you would start. So this is especially powerful at the end of the school year when you're, trying to keep things organized. You want to have a nice system. You could maybe even set up a calendar reminder for 15 minutes every Thursday. Like all of that would count here if you are looking for a way to put those ideas into action. Now, it's important to remember when we're talking about this today, it's not about one shortcut. It's really about finding, a way to build this into your practice all the time, right? Building some habits. So when you start reorganizing tasks, on your to-do list, maybe they fall into one of these 3 categories. And you can start making some really intentional choices about where AI can give you a head start. It's not about replacing what you do. It's about reducing the time you spend on the tasks that really pull you away from the important work. So I hope that, this gives you kind of a start for thinking on some ways to use AI for tasks that maybe are not the best use of your time, that take a little too long. So let's make this EdTech easy with a few key points from today's episode. Use AI to turn your notes into polished rubrics, newsletters, and classroom materials faster. Ask AI to draft lesson outlines from your objectives, then refine them with your expertise. Simplify text and identify tricky vocab using AI before sharing with students. Create consistent file naming and organization systems with AI to keep resources easy to find. Don't forget to head to easyedtechpodcast.com and look for today's episode, and that's where you'll find our show notes page, all the links to the resources I talked about today. You can also find the link in just the summary section or wherever you're listening to this episode. If you expand on, where it describes what we talked about, you'll find a link that takes you straight to the show notes page, which has the transcript and all of the resources that I mentioned today. This episode is sponsored by my new ASCD deck of cards, Purposeful EdTech Tips. It's part of the Quick Wins series and packed with 50 fast, effective ideas for planning, teaching, and reflection. You'll find AI prompts, student activities, teacher tips, and strategies for checking for understanding, all designed to help you use EdTech with purpose. Whether you're planning your next unit or looking for a quick idea before class starts, these cards are full of inspiration and super easy to use. Head to classtechtips.com/cards to grab your deck today. That's classtechtips.com/cards to check it out. Thank you for listening to this new episode of the Easy EdTech podcast. I love creating new episodes for you each week, but I could use a bit of help spreading the word about the podcast. Can you leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app? Spotify will let you tap on the stars, and Apple Podcasts will let you tap on the stars and leave a 1 or 2 sentence review. Thank you so much for taking this extra step. It helps other educators find episodes like this one when they're searching for EdTech tips.